Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's Play Attention webinar. My name is Gwen Sorley, and I will be your host today. I'm glad to see we have a wide variety of people here today. We have some people who are coming to this webinar and are current clients of Play Attention. Then we have some of you who have been just looking into the program, deciding whether or not it's the right learning tool for you. So I'm glad to see all of you here. There are a couple of things I want to mention before we get started. One is that if you have questions at any time during the webinar or comments, because like I said, a lot of you are current clients and you might have some things to add, some experiences to add. So go ahead and type your questions or comments in the Q&A box found at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. That way I'll be able to address your questions as we proceed through. Also, we are recording this event, so at the end of the webinar, you are going to receive an email with a link for the recording so that you'll be able to review any of the points that we discussed. You can also share the webinar with any staff members or family members as well. If at any time you lose connection, don't worry. Simply log out and log back in, and your connection should be restored. Again, my name is Gwen Sorley. As many of you know, if you've been working with Play Attention for a while, I've been using Play Attention for over 20 years now. I started using Play Attention when I was a classroom teacher back in 1996 when I was teaching second and third grade. So I've worked with every age from 6 years old all the way up to 25 years old using Play Attention. So hopefully my experiences with Play Attention and lots of different individuals will help you get a better understanding of how we can create Play Attention sessions that will be of maximum benefit. This is part of a special series we're running called How to Build a Better Brain, Solving the Puzzle. So this is just the first webinar in our series. Other webinars that will follow will include Play Attention and Dementia, Play Attention and Autism, Play Attention and Healthy Eating and Nutrition. So there are going to be a lot of different topics we cover over the next few weeks, and I do hope that you plan to attend some of the upcoming webinars as well. Now, today's webinar, we're not going to be showing Play Attention, but if you are looking into Play Attention and trying to decide whether or not it's the right learning tool for you and haven't attended one of our regular informational webinars, we do have a regular webinar tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, and you can register for that online if you'd like to attend tomorrow's informational webinar. Okay, let's get started. So again, today's topic is the top 10 tips to a successful Play Attention program or session. Now, this is called How to Build a Better Brain, right? So it's important we look at what Play Attention does in the learning process. Now, we hear so much about ADHD, don't we? Attention deficit. Really, there's no one with a complete deficit of attention. That's really a misnomer, isn't it? They usually have great attention. It's just scattered over a variety of things. Or if you give them something very high stimuli, for example, if you give them a high stimuli off-the-shelf video game or something of high interest like Legos or something they're very interested in, they can almost hyper-focus on that, can't they? So when something's high stimuli or of high interest, they can hyper-focus. Their brain is wired to pay attention to that high stimuli. So what's more difficult is when they get into a low stimuli situation, much like the classroom teacher or the boss in the workplace who cannot compete with that high stimuli type of activity. So that's why you're going to notice when you're doing the Play Attention games or activities, everything's kept very low stimuli so that they can learn how to pay attention to that low stimuli at will. Now, Play Attention is based in neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is what we know that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable. So if we provide the brain with the right learning tool and the most immediate, consistent feedback, the brain can learn new skills to make up for any deficit, even if it's in the area of attention. So that is the foundation of Play Attention. knowing that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable, and if you provide that individual with the right learning tool and constant and immediate feedback, you can actually create new neural networks to become formed in the brain. Now, when those networks start to be formed, because typically if you're using play attention, you're using it because they have weak networks for attention. When you start using play attention, you're actually creating new neural networks to be formed. But in the beginning, these networks for attention are weak, right? They're weak networks. So they may seem a little bit inconsistent when they're performing back in the classroom or back at home. They're inconsistent in their ability to pay attention or filter distractions because those networks are new. But through the practice and repetition, what you're doing is you're actually strengthening those neural networks to a point of permanency. And that's what we're going to work to a point of permanency. So if you're using play attention with a 7-year-old, not only will that student have these skills now when he's 7, but he'll have these skills when he's 47, working to a point of permanency where those neural networks have actually become formed and permanent. So you are actually changing the architecture of the brain by using play attention and helping to form those new neural networks. Play attention is the only program available that integrates feedback technology because remember, your student or your clients or yourself, you're going to have that body wave armband on. And that armband monitors brain activity that tells us how attentive you are. And that's what allows you to control all of the movement of the screen characters just with your attention alone. And you receive constant and immediate feedback as to whether or not you truly are focused and paying attention. That's just the first step. Once we get you fully engaged, then we build in cognitive training. Because when we talk about ADHD, attention deficit, attention is really just the tip of the iceberg, right? Yes, they have attention difficulties, but they also have a hard time completing homework assignments. So 15 minutes of homework takes 2 or 3 hours. They have difficulty following through with verbal instructions, difficulty with social skills, picking up those social cues, difficulty filtering out distractions. So there are so many other skills that we can improve, and we've incorporated all of those skills into play attention. So we integrate feedback technology with the cognitive skills. So if you are going to work on attention or memory or task completion, you have to be at your peak attentive state in order to then practice those skills. And then we build in our behavior shaping component. And many of you have been working on this, the behavior shaping component, where we actually allow them to get a one-to-one correlation on how certain behaviors affect their attention. And then you can use that to help them learn how to control those behaviors not conducive to good attention. So that's what play attention is. It's the combination of feedback technology plus cognitive skill training and behavior shaping. That's what sets play attention apart from any other program available. And there are 3 university studies done by Tufts University School of Medicine to show the efficacy. So if you've not yet reviewed those studies and you'd like to have a sample of those or be able to receive those studies to review, please let me know. You can just type in the Q&A box and we'll make certain that we send those studies to you as well. Okay, so let's move on. Let's look at the top 10 tips to a successful play attention session. The first tip is to assess your students' needs prior to starting play attention. And as many of you know, your support advisor will help you with this. You have an option to do the Focus CPT, which is a standardized assessment of attention. Now, all of us here are accredited to provide you with the Focus assessment. And when we do Focus, we're looking at 4 constructs of attention. So we look at how the individual performs over time to a mundane task, the consistency of that performance. We also look at how impulsive that student is. And we also look at how distracted that individual is. How are you distracted visually or auditorily? And so we look at all of those components to then take that information and pinpoint areas that we can actually improve through the use of play attention. This is simply an option for you. And again, all of us here are accredited to provide that focus assessment to you. And it is norm based. So your attention is compared to that of your peers. Really interesting and a great assessment to take prior to starting play attention. Whether or not you're doing the focus assessment, we also like to look at parent teacher surveys. Or you can simply make a list of strengths and weaknesses. I have some parents who just go through the different questions and make a list of strengths and weaknesses. What do we want to address? And if you're an adult looking at play attention for yourself, this is also an important thing to look at. If you would like to look at your own personal strengths and weaknesses and pinpoint certain areas that you would like to strengthen. Sometimes it's really helpful to write those down and make your list. Then we'll take all of this information and discuss this with your play attention support advisor. Your play attention support advisor will use that information to then customize the program that's right for you. This is an example of the focus assessment tool. So you see, this is who the tester was, the date, the name and age of this individual. And this is just one component that we look at, consistency. Consistency is the measurement and quality of reacting or performing in a similar way in terms of accuracy and responsiveness. So it's all broken down for you. This is that student's individual responses here. And this purple line right here is where the norm falls. Now, the light purple is below the norm, and the dark purple is above the norm. You see that this individual scored below the norm on consistency. That means that this individual did not perform very well in the area of consistency. So the reaction that this student had during this exam and the accuracy was below the norm. So usually, what does this look like in the classroom? I would suspect that this particular student has a really hard time starting assignments in a timely manner. So homework is never started on time. And once homework is started, the parent is typically standing over that child, redirecting that child. That is typically what we would see if someone is struggling with consistency. So what does this relate to in play attention? That means we really need to focus on the time on task activity. And we're going to teach that individual how to start and complete an assignment in a timely manner. So this is how we take the results and pinpoint areas that we can improve through play attention. And then when Delaney actually takes this exam again at the 20-hour mark or 40-hour mark, we should see her blue line way up here in the dark purple or above the norm. I have a couple of questions here. Those of you who have asked for the Tufts University School of Medicine results, I will definitely send those to you. And Jill, is there an additional charge for focus? Yes, the focus assessment is $49, Jill. Good question. And again, if you would like to call, we'll be able to schedule that with you. Gabriella, if you have questions, just simply type your question first and then push submit so I can see your question. Okay, so this is just one way. We'll also do parent surveys with you. We'll also be able to use all of your information to customize the play attention plan. Okay, Jim, I understand. I will get those studies over to you. Thank you. And it's good to see you here. Jim, you are a longtime user of play attention. I'm glad you're here. Gay, yes, that is $49 a student. Now, Gay, you are also a current client and you are a professional client. So focus is also something that you may want to consider becoming accredited so you can provide that for your students. And we can certainly talk about how you can become accredited in play attention. I'm sorry, accredited in the focus assessment. Gabriella, absolutely. I'll get those studies to you as well. Once you have developed your profile for your student, you want to input that into the play attention system. You're going to individualize each student's profile. You're going to include that student's name, age group, because when you submit the age group within Play Attention 6, it actually changes the theme, the look and feel, and these little helpful avatars change as well based on the student's age range. You want to input the circle of success. The circle of success is an area within Play Attention that allows you to input parents, teachers, mentors, coaches, any people who are important in that individual's lives. You can put their name, their phone number, and their email address. And that allows you to keep in constant contact with individuals who can then positively reinforce what the student is learning during the play attention sessions back into the classroom, back into the home setting, or back at the office, because that's really going to help everything come together. It's great that you're working on these skills in play attention, but you want those skills reinforced in other real life situations. And it's really key to make certain that you include other people in the process. You also want to indicate how many games per session the person will be playing. So if you're working, let's say, on 4 sessions a week for 15-minute blocks of time, they're probably going to do 3 games per session. If you're doing 2 sessions per week at 30 minutes a block of time, then you're going to do 5 different games. And you are going to input that information into Play Attention so that when Sheer Genius selects the games for you, Sheer Genius will know, am I selecting 3 games or 5 games for this session? You also want to customize the game list. Now that goes back to setting up the profile and using the information we got from either Focus or the parent surveys, the strengths and weaknesses. We're going to use that information to decide which games that individual will access. What skills are most important to that individual? So if Gay's coming in for her session, I might have her working on attention stamina, visual tracking, and time on task, where Jim is working on social skills, auditory processing, and visual tracking. So we're going to mix up the game list depending on that individual's strengths and weaknesses. So this way, we know that the individual is getting the right skills for his or her brain development. Virginia says, who are the students who make up the control group, i.e. are they students who do not have ADHD? Right, this is just a norm group of individuals who most of them are suspected to have ADHD, but not necessarily diagnosed ADHD. Customize your student profile. When you go in here, this is what it looks like. Here's where you set up the first name and the last name, the gender, whether or not that individual is a child, a teen, or an adult. And then once we set up that, you also have an area here where you can set up that circle of success. So right here is where you have the names of the individuals that are important to that student, the email addresses, the phone numbers, and then the relationship, the father and the teacher. You can put mentor or coaches. You can add as many people as you'd like. Then right here is where you set up the number of games per session. Now, if you haven't already gone through this with your support advisor, or you're just looking into the program, you haven't started your play attention system yet, this is something that your support advisor will do with you, setting up that profile. Then down here, you'll see all of these games that are listed in the play attention system. And you can see this individual has attention stamina, visual tracking, time on task, short-term memory, discriminatory processing, academic bridge, and auditory processing. So when Sheer Genius looks at this individual, as this individual, I think we are under Paul Smith here, when he logs in, you'll see that Sheer Genius is going to select 5 games and is only going to select from the games that are highlighted down here in blue. That way we make certain that each individual receives the appropriate training. Schedule your sessions and be consistent. So here we're going to work 1 hour per week minimum, okay? So we're always going to work 1 hour per week minimum. So that's why I mentioned earlier that you might do 2 30-minute sessions, or you might do 4 15-minute sessions, but you just want to do at least an hour per week. Now, a lot of times I get the question, well, do I have to do an hour, or can I do more than an hour per week? And you can absolutely do more than an hour per week in your session, but you want to be aware that your student can get burned out, right? Because this is like a piece of exercise equipment for the mind. You want to make certain that the individual is not getting burnt out, because sometimes we think, well, if 1 is good, 10 is better. And that's not necessarily true, right? If 1 is good, 10 might not necessarily be better. We are more concerned about the quality of the session rather than the quantity of session. You're also going to build up on small successes as you go through the process and work to a point of permanency. Now, those small successes, those small improvements, you're going to start to see after about a month, month and a half of consistent training. But the research shows that in order to gain permanency of the skills learned, you want to work to a point where there's not going to be any regression once we wean that student off. That usually takes around the 40 hours of training. So right around the 40-hour mark is where we see permanency take place. And if you're working an hour per week, that means you're going to work at least probably about 8 months of consistent training. After that point, we're usually ready to just wean them off the system. And again, your support advisor will help you with that. This is where you can schedule your sessions. You see here that there are certain sessions scheduled for Paul, and that will help you keep on track. You don't have to put your sessions in the calendar, but we recommend it because sometimes when you put it down in the calendar, you know it's going to get done. And we know that for training purposes, consistency is key. Number 4, start every session with review of previous performance. All good lessons start with review. Why is it important to start with review? When you log in to Play Attention, the review is already done for you. You actually see that you have the journal entry displayed. Not only do you have the journal entry displayed, but you also have the data from the previous session displayed. So it's very easy for you, as soon as that student logs in, to review performance from the prior session. And this is important in the learning process. Remember, we're trying to build that better brain. So we always want to start the session with review because it connects the current lesson to previous lessons. It also allows the student time to demonstrate what he has learned and what he remembers. Okay, very, very key. Before you start, you want to elicit from that student, what do you remember? What did you learn last time? And again, that first display is done that for you. This is what it looks like. When your student logs in, you see, welcome back, Paul. Let's review your previous game performance. And when you click on the different games, you'll see how he performed the last time. So you see that we've selected short-term memory, And all of Paul's data is here for you. So you can look at how he did the last time that particular activity was performed. Very crucial in developing that brain growth. Number 5, discuss the game's educational objective and how it relates back to the classroom, the home, or the office. This is really key, right? Because the student has to know why he or she is doing this activity. It's very important that whenever we take on a learning exercise, we know why we're doing this. What is the purpose? And again, you want to state what the student should be able to do as a result of practicing this game. You also want to discuss why it's relevant. How does this relate back into the classroom, the home, or the workplace? Because it's great if they can do these different activities while they're sitting in front of you during the session. But what's more important is that they're going to be able to take the skills they're learning and transfer and generalize them back into the classroom and back at home and back in the workplace, because that's what's important. One thing if they can do it during their session, another thing if they can actually apply these skills. And this tip is going to help you ensure that transfer and generalization. This is an example of how play attention prompts you to do just that. So after you look at that review, remember we started with the review, and the game screen comes up and it allows you to review previous performance. And then you say, let's play. You go on to the new cognitive skills that have been picked out for you by sheer genius. And right here, it reviews the educational correlate. Discriminatory processing is the ability to discriminate between incoming stimuli very quickly, allowing you to pay attention to what's important and filter out all of those distractions. So this is like when you're in the classroom and you have to pay attention to the teacher, but you have to tune out the small groups working and people walking by and the air conditioner going on and off. That's what we're working on here. When you're sitting in the classroom and you have to pay attention and filter out all of those other things going on around you. Really key. And again, play attention prompts you to make certain that you're able to do that. Hanley says, how do you set a goal for today's session? Actually, you don't have to set the goal. And that's a really good question, because that's coming up in my next slide here, is goal setting. And actually, sheer genius will do that for you. Jay says, and you just gave an initial, so I'm just going to say the initial. Focus CPT is a form of questionnaire. Is it similar to the TOVA? It's similar to the IVA or the TOVA. But it incorporates both visual and auditory cues. And I should go back to Virginia. Virginia had asked about the norm group. The norm group does not have ADHD. The norm group does not have ADHD. The individuals taking the test actually are typically, they are questioned as to whether or not they do have attention difficulties. Those are the people taking the test. It's questionable whether or not they are actually struggling with attention and the constructs of attention. Jay, the CPT is not a questionnaire. It's a computerized performance test. So there are different stimuli given. One is a solid star, one is a star outline. Whenever they see the solid star, they have to push the space bar as quickly as possible. If they see the star outline, they don't push the space bar. So those are the two stimuli they have to respond to. So it is a very mundane task given over about a 20-minute period of time. And then at certain intervals, they get either auditory or visual distractions. And we look to see how they deal with those auditory or visual distractions. Does it affect negatively their performance or their accuracy? Good question. Jacob. Okay, thank you, Jacob. Madhavi, how can we schedule the focus? You can just give us a call, Madhavi. I know, I believe you are a current client as well. So if you would like to call for that focus assessment, call the 800 number, you can absolutely do that. or you can just type a note at the end of the webinar and I'll make certain that someone follows up with you. Okay, very good question. Maybe if you have a question, make certain you type it in and then click submit. Okay, number 6, review today's behavior and game goals. So this goes back to our very good question from Hanley about how do you set today's behavior goals and game goals. It's actually done for you. And why is it so important in brain development and the learning of skills? The student knows once you state that goal for the day, then the student has a clear picture of what he needs to concentrate on and what to improve. You want to go into an activity with what's called deliberate practice. You don't want your student just entering the activity and going through the motions, right? There has to be a purpose and there has to be a higher level of achievement that I'm working towards achieving. If I just always go in with no plan and no goal and I just go through the motions, then it's very unlikely I'm going to improve my skills. So by setting that game goal and that behavioral goal, the student has a clear idea of what to concentrate on and what to improve. It also increases the motivation to achieve, right? If they have a goal set for them, then they're going to work even harder to achieve that goal. If they don't know what they're working towards, then there's no reason to work that hard, right? They're just going to go through the motions. So by setting that goal ahead of time, you're actually increasing motivation. You also increase pride and satisfaction in performance because once the student completes the activity and sees how he achieved that goal, you have that improved self-esteem. And the goals that Sheer Genius set for you are called mini goals. They're small, achievable goals. Because if you give them a goal that's too high and just unattainable, then you're going to cause frustration. We're working on small steps of improvement, gradually building them up over time. Nana says, can kids who not speak English complete the attention test? Absolutely, no problem at all. They can do the focus assessment. They can even do the play attention training with absolutely no problem at all. You do not have to have English as your first language. They can also see a clear forward progress on something that might seem like a long process. As many of you know, there's a lot of repetition in play attention because we're building those skills, right? We're practicing those skills. So sometimes it might seem to them as a long process, but when you can set mini goals throughout, then they also see how they're progressing, and that helps with motivation. This is how Sheer Genius sets these goals for you. So again, this is not something that you have to do. Sheer Genius does it for you automatically. So first, remember we came in and Sheer Genius gave you that review. Then Sheer Genius gave you the educational objective. And now Sheer Genius is laying out the goal for both behavior and the goal for the particular game. Right here, my student's goal is to decrease fidgeting. And his goal today is to fidget 0 times. Now, my student has been working on fidgeting for a while now, and he's been able to extinguish it during the session. So we're going to just stay here for a little while to make certain he maintains that and then move on to a new behavioral goal. It's also important to only set one goal per behavior or one goal per game, because we don't want to overload them. If they come in and they have 10 different goals to achieve, then they're not even going to want to start because it's too much, right? So that's why we set one behavioral goal overall for the entire session and one mini goal for each particular game or learning skill. The game skill here is short-term memory. That's what we're working on. And you see right here, Sheer Genius has auto-populated today's goal. Today, you're going to try to maintain 75% attention or higher. So once again, you don't have to set these goals. They are done for you. And you're going to allow your students to work towards higher level of achievement. Number 7, use that behavior shaping tool, because if you have students, and I want everyone here to think about, are you going to be working on behaviors and trying to extinguish self-distracting behaviors like fidgeting, calling out, nail biting, hair twirling, chewing on your shirt? It's really difficult sometimes to help them learn how to control those behaviors because, one, a lot of times they don't know that they even exhibit these behaviors. A lot of times they're completely unaware of it. So you might ask them to stop the fidgeting or stop biting their nails, and they're very unaware of it. More importantly, they do not know how it affects them. They know it bothers you because you keep telling them to stop it, but they don't really know how it affects them. And then 3, a lot of times they feel like everything's outside of their control. So you definitely want to use the behavior shaping tool within Play Attention, because not only does that behavior shaping tool allow them to get a one-to-one correlation on how behaviors affect their attention, they also see that over time, they can control that behavior. And that's where you're going to see the real behavioral changes take place. So, for example, if they're playing attention stamina and they have that character down to the bottom of the ocean just with their attention alone, as soon as they start to fidget or do one of those self-distracting behaviors, that character is going to start to float up. Now they have that one-to-one correlation on how that behavior affects their attention. And you're going to use that to set your behavioral goals, or actually, Sheer Genius will set that behavioral goal for you, because you're going to input that information here. So when the student finishes the game, if you're working on behaviors, the next scale that you're going to see is this behavior shaping report. And this is where you're going to input how many times that student did each behavior during that particular game. And then Sheer Genius is going to use that data to set the behavioral goals. Really, really important. And over time, as they see they start to decrease those behaviors, like Paul, now he's at fidget 0 times, right? He knows he can control that. And that's where you're going to see the real behavior changes take place as well. So far, you see how Play Attention is specifically developed in sound educational psychology. It's developed in teaching methods that we know work best in the learning process and build a better brain. We started with review, then we talked about the educational foundation, we set mini goals, we're using behaviors. So all of these are key components to building that better brain. Tip number 8, at the end of the game, discuss performance. And this is known as time for reflection. We talk about, was the goal met? If the goal was met, what did he do to actually improve? So you want to give him time to reflect and think about, well, what did I do in order to improve? So, for example, when we looked at that mini goal previously, the mini goal for short-term memory was to maintain attention at 75% or higher. So if my student Paul finishes short-term memory and has 80% attention, then I'm going to ask him, well, what did you do to help you finish with 80%? And he may have recognized things that he personally did, or you may need to prompt him. Well, I noticed that you were sitting back, you were really relaxed. I even heard you do a deep, heavy breathing. That was really good. That seemed to really help you. You weren't leaning into the screen. Sometimes when you do that, you're getting a little stressed and your percent of attention is lower. So don't expect them to be able to pinpoint exactly how they improved. You may need to do some prompting and some modeling to help them really learn that process. Also, if the goal was not met, that's okay. But take this opportunity to discuss how he can improve next time. Now, this is the screen that you'll see after you do the behavior shaping. Then you will see the actual performance. So right here, you'll see just now we played this game, and it tells me with this green arrow right here that I did complete my goal. And my goal was to complete with less than 3 impulsive strikes. And I was able to do that. So this would be the opportunity for my coach to prompt me. How are you able to control that impulsivity better this time? And I'll discuss that with my coach, giving me time to reflect so that I am going to be more likely to incorporate those skills. You don't want to actually talk a lot during the game itself. Yeah, not during. And you asked, do you tell them that they're fidgeting while they're playing or after? No, you don't want to actually talk to them during the game. You want to wait till the game is over, and then you use that time for reflection. You don't want to talk during the game because that's probably going to distract them. Gay says, I have the kids finish every session by standing up and telling the parents what I learned, what I'm proud of, and what I plan to improve next time. Perfect. And that is going to be our journal entry that we do at the end as well. And I like that you have the students actually share that with the parents. Gabriella says, so what do you mean by call out in the table? There's actually on the table, let me go back there. There is actually I think we can even see it here, right here. See, calling out right there. So for example, I had a student who used to call out, I like SpaghettiOs, just anything random that would come to his mind. And he'd call it out during the play attention session. So that's where that is tracked right there, that particular behavior. Okay, I hope that explains that a little bit better. Okay, tip number 9, teachable moments. You want to make certain that you discuss the behaviors, strategies, and improvements made during the game, but you don't want to actually have this conversation during the game. You're going to discuss the strategies that were used during the game, but you're going to wait until the game has ended before having that conversation. You want to pick up on those key teachable moments and actually have them talk about how you can use those strategies back into the classroom and the home situation or the workplace to help again with that transfer and generalization. Gabriella says, oh, like singing. Yes, yeah, if you start singing during the activity, usually we start with the rules of the play attention session. Talk only when the game is over, stay relaxed and have fun, blink normally. So you can just redirect him quietly. Remember, talk only when the games are over. So you can redirect him, but you're not going to have that conversation. But Gabriella, if your child has that character down at the bottom of the ocean, let's say he's playing diver and he selected the dolphin and he's able to push that character down to the bottom of the ocean just with his attention alone. As soon as he starts to sing, that character is going to start to float up because he's no longer as attentive. And this is an example of a teachable moment, okay? So what you're going to do is after the game has finished, you'll say to him, you know, what happened to that character when you started to sing? Well, he started to float up. So what does that mean? It means I'm not paying attention. So in the classroom, when you sing like that or you call out, what does that mean? It means I'm not paying attention. So now it's no longer you saying, don't do that or stop that. Now there's meaning behind it. He has an understanding of how it affects him. And more importantly, like we talked about over time, he's going to learn that he can control it, okay? That's a really good example of teachable moments and using teachable moments. Number 10, time for reward and positive reinforcement. So in order to give rewards, there is a full banking system within the play attention system. Because remember, if your student reaches certain mini goals, then your student receives a point, right? He actually receives a point for making his behavior goal or being able to achieve his game goal, he earns a point. And then those points can be used in the rewards chart so that he's actually able to purchase rewards that you and the student have put in there. And if you are a professional client, you should probably talk to the students' parents, grandparents, teachers, mentors, and have them give ideas for the rewards so that you'll be able to customize the rewards that that individual is going to be motivated by and put them into the banking system. You want to have both short-term rewards and long-term rewards. A short-term reward should be something that your student can probably purchase at the end of a session or maybe at the end of 2 sessions. They should be able to get that immediate reward. Especially in the early sessions, you'll notice that they are more apt to need that positive reinforcement right away, that short-term reward. But then we know it's really important to teach our students delayed gratification. So you will also want to have long-term rewards set up. So that will teach them how to wait, save their points in order to purchase that larger reward a few months down the road. Okay, so really important to have a couple of different types of rewards set up. And this will help again with the motivation. So you see here, we have examples of long-term and short-term rewards set up for my student. Here's an example of a short-term reward. So for 7 points, he gets to select something out of the grab bag. So 7 points, he can probably earn 7 points in about 2 sessions. So that's a short-term reward. But then we have long-term rewards right here. For 50 points, he can purchase this long-term reward, which is a sleepover. So in order to purchase that, he's actually going to have to save his points towards that goal. So again, we're providing 2 different types of reinforcement. And what I see a lot of times with my students is that in the beginning, they do need that constant reinforcement. But as we go through the process and they're getting reinforced at home, they're doing better in school, they're getting positively reinforced, they're getting along better with their peers, you actually start to see this shift where they no longer have to be externally motivated. They're actually shifting more towards this internal motivation, which is where we really want them to be. You know, they see all of these changes, all of these positive changes in their world, and they want to work even harder to make certain those changes grow even more. Tip 11, the journal writing. And this is what Gay had just mentioned before, that she has her students actually stand up and tell the parents and her what they learned, what they're proud of, and what they need to improve. So that's a great way. It really gives the student time to discuss what he learned. It helps ensure retention. Remember, building that better brain. Not only are we going to start with time for review so it can trigger what they remember, what they learned in the past, but this time for reflection ensures retention of the material. And here are the 3 prompting questions that we give in the journal, and you're going to see that here shortly. So here's the journal: what I learned, what I'm proud of. And this part is auto-populated by sheer genius with all those mini goals, what I need to improve. And again, this is an area where you may need to help them. You may need to do some modeling and help them really get a better understanding of how to think about their own thinking, that metacognition, getting them to think about their own thinking. So what I learned today, a lot of times in the early sessions especially, they'll say, I don't know, right? And so you have to help them with that, help them with what you learned. Well, you know, one thing we learned is that when you were having a hard time because you were tense and stressed and you were leaning into the system and you weren't able to move the character in the right way. But then when we say relax, take a deep breath, and you sat back and you relaxed, you were able to push it down to the bottom. So I think when you're relaxed, you're able to pay better attention. That's what we learn. Or Gabriella, go back to your singing. What did we learn about your singing? Well, I learned that my singing distracts me. I wasn't able to pay attention. Okay? What I'm proud of. Be really, really specific on what I'm proud of. I'm proud that I was able to maintain my attention 75% of the time and time on task. I was proud that I was able to decrease my fidgeting by 2 points. So make certain that they're very, very specific in that. And then what I need to improve, like I said, is auto-populated by sheer genius. And here you see that there are all of those different goals that are set by sheer genius stated here. Rob, I'm sorry you got temporarily disconnected, but I am going to be sending out the recording, so hopefully you'll be able to review any parts that you missed when you were disconnected. Number 12, and I know this was top 10, but there were actually 12 I wanted to mention, so I am going over by 2. This is our final tip. Tip 12, send updates to the circle of success. Remember, we talked about it's great that you're there working with your student or your client, or if you're an adult, you're working on your own, you may be working independently. Make certain that you involve as many people into this process as possible. Give parents, mentors, teachers, colleagues the ability to positively reinforce the new behaviors and skills that you're using in every area of your life. This, again, will help with transfer and generalization and improve self-esteem. Because if your student does really well or your child does really well during a session, and then when he gets back into the classroom, the teacher says, I heard you paid attention really well during play attention. Now let's see how we can do today. I know you can do it. That positive reinforcement is going to boost that self-esteem. So now they're getting recognized for doing something in a positive manner. This is an example. So if you have set up those people in your circle of success, you simply go to the reports page for that individual and you click on email the circle of success. You can decide who you want to include in this email, and you'll go ahead and type. You see that I typed in a message. Today, Paul and I had a play attention session. Our focus was to decrease fidgeting. He did a fantastic job. Last session, he fidgeted 10 times. Today, he only fidgeted 8 times. Please reinforce Paul when you notice this behavior in the classroom. Okay, so you're telling them what to positively reinforce and how to watch for that and reinforce it when you see him controlling it back in the classroom or home situation. And I wrote, he also completed time on task in 6 minutes and 27 seconds. He was very focused. So this just brings it all together. So that circle of success is really key to that transfer and generalization. I hope you see that play attention is structured in such a way to help build a better brain. You're going to be working on setting behavioral goals, educational goals to help improve specific cognitive skills to help them make certain that they're able to develop those skills and unlock each person's personal ability